Okay, so hello and welcome to round one of Casuistry, the charity debate hosted by GiveforGood. I, Ayush Gupta, will serve as your moderator throughout the duration of the tournament if you're lucky enough to get into round two and three. And Riddhi Mukherjee is your judge for this round. So, round of applause for you guys. Um, the order of speakers will be first speaker being Riva Agarwal, second Purabhi Kayan, third Adhiraj Ghosh Tasidar, followed by Mobari Maiti, followed by Sia Agarwal, followed by Prakhar Drolia, Ritika Deb, Abranil Chaudhary, and Titash Majumdar. If I butchered any of your names, I do apologize. But as you know, the order will be first speaker for, second speaker against, and we'll be alternating in that order. So once that's out of the way, the motion for this round stands as social media censorship is necessary for its long-term survival. So if the first speaker, Riva Agarwal, is ready, you can indicate that to us. You have 3 minutes.
Can I start?
You have the floor.
We're all well aware of the questionable material easily available on the internet. Disturbing websites with detailed information about sexual violence, crimes, and instructions on drug use can be found. This negatively affects people of younger ages psychologically, making them believe that they should do illegal things like drugs to look cool. These sites weaken children's morals and infect their minds, and many adolescent crimes are caused due to this. Furthermore, survey carried out by Charles Sturt University even showed that parents are extremely concerned of the unreal information present online, and they support a mandatory internet filtering. The reason why it should be mandatory is because parents won't be able to monitor children's web pages all the time, and anytime any child can wander off to a site that provides wrong information and misguides the child into taking wrong decisions. But if the government runs mandatory filtering of such sites, this problem can easily be averted. Secondly, the social media is filled with inauthentic and false information, and there is no way to know whether the articles we're reading is true and to be trusted, or has the real case been spiced up and turned into a series of misfortunate events to portray a blockbuster story to the public. People are going around saying anything they want, not caring if they're spreading wrong information. And while freedom of speech is necessary, it beats the point when it is used to wrongly manipulate someone's thinking. So, as more and more people start questioning the reliability, the question arises that should people be allowed to say anything at all without even caring how the statements affect other people, affect others? And should it actually be this easy to influence public opinion? No, the line has to be drawn somewhere, and pages promoting wrong information to present a story that never happened must be banned. This can only happen when a high level of internet security is maintained and only trusted sources are allowed to be published. People should have their own opinions on it, but the sources need to be verified to prevent panic and unrest in society. Slowly, people are starting to lose their trust in social media. And if we continue how we are right now, there will be a point where no one turns towards social media for anything. And hence, social media has to start being filtered, monitored, secured, and verified, or in shorter term, censored, so that public still trust social media in the long term. Lastly, everyone's privacy is violated on social media, from celebrities to even normal people, and people are digging up private videos, pictures, texts, emails, everything to their own benefit, and no one's location is safe. They can be found just like that, and no information we have on our phones or laptops are safe either. And the people who do such invasions of privacy rarely have a motive behind it, and are usually internet trolls who took a comment to personally and now make it a personal vendetta. And this has to be stopped, and such people need to be reprimanded, because this leads to people going off social media, and soon when too many people start doing it, social media use will go down. And hence I repeat that lines have to be drawn, and social media censorship is the only way to make it survive in the long term.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. People wishing to ask questions, please raise your hands through the raise hand feature. Okay, any other questions? Audience? Okay, so we'll be recognizing the question by Prakhar Drolia, followed by Adrija Sen.
Right, thank you, sir. So the question to this is the question that I have to the previous speaker. The speaker talked about how there is presence of false information or misleading information as well. What does the speaker have to say about how censorship has to be found to be used in a manner that helps promote a certain propaganda and influence public opinion in that manner by using censorship for that?
As we know that most of the articles we're reading they're just spiced up. They're saying stories that do not exist. What I'm saying is censorship has to be used to ban such articles, to not falsely influence minds of people who don't particularly understand what's going on.
Okay, so hope that answers your question. Adrisha Sen, please proceed.
Ma'am, when you speak about censorship being a necessity to ensure the survival of social media, what kind of censorship are you referring to? Are you referring to censorship from the private company or on a nationwide basis? If it's a nationwide basis, isn't that totalitarianism?
The censorship has to be government based. Sources have to be verified. There are people saying there are articles nowadays alleging stuff that's not happening, and no, it's not totalitarianism, because people's minds are being influenced about things that are not even happening. And when and that's creating lots of panic and mistrust in society between everyone. So no, governments have to filter and mandatorily monitor these sites.
Okay, thank you. So I hope that speech has set the tone for this round. We'll be moving on to the next speaker, who is Purvi Kayan, against the motion.
Can I start?
You have the floor for 3 minutes.
So I strongly oppose the motion which says social media censorship is necessary for long-term survival. The most important point against the censorship of internet is that it is against the freedom of speech and it violates human rights. The internet is an open, communicative tool which provides a platform for people from all across the globe to make a free speech. It should be a place where people can express their point of views regardless of society's acceptance. However, the censorship of internet censors, filters, and sometimes even deletes people's free speech. This measure hinders the free spread of information. People's right of speech, rights of communication, and to some extent right to know are violated. This breaches the spirit of democracy, and it is an obstacle to the development of internet. The government may abuse the right of censorship to exclude the speeches and information opposed to the authority. The government may manipulate the rights of censorship to hide the information which is disadvantageous to its policies. The political parties may manipulate the rights to censorship to limit the power of the political opponents. The public's right to know is deprived and the public are controlled by the government. Consequently, without the supervision of the public, the democracy of the nation is damaged greatly. And this gives rise to serious negative influence to the whole nation. The public cannot get enough information to the disputed issues such as homosexuality or political disturbance in many political parties, which are censored and filtered by the government itself. And thus, this prejudices and intolerance emerges, which does brings unfairness to the society. And when the government is responsible for what people can access for information, then there is no longer any personal accountability for one's actions. This process cedes the control of ethics, morality, and standards to whoever is in charge of implementing these policies. Once someone is willing to allow another individual, company, or elected official to tell them how to think, feel, and act, it becomes much easier to let people control over one's life, and the personal life decision disappears as well. Instead of being individual, censorship turns people into commodities. The censorship of internet will have a negative effect on the work, study, and communication of net citizens. The filtering of keywords influences the research of many teachers, scholars, and even students. The internet filter is a software which controls access to online content. Methods are more commonly referred to as blacklist or whitelist, and the filter prevents inappropriate content with whitelist, backlist, or keyword system. And by this way, many useful information and normal keywords may be filtered. Because of the internet censorship, people cannot express freely and get much information that they desire. The creativity of people is discouraged, and which negatively impacts the political, technological, and even cultural innovation of the whole society. Thus, I strongly oppose the motion and stand firmly against it.
Okay, well-timed speech. Thank you. We'll be recognizing 2 questions in that. Okay, so yeah, Riva Agarwal followed by Ritika De.
So recently in the COVID-19 situation, many fake news was being spread, increasing the panic between everyone, and false rumors which rooted from social media was being spread. So do you not think that if these situations were being monitored before they were being spread like wildfire, do you not think that the public panic would have reduced by a lot?
See, if the government keeps on monitoring everything, then it will be not like the government will be working on their development or continuously on checking what wrong information is being spread or not. It is us who can. It, I mean, I understand that we cannot know which information is right or wrong, but then we are enough educated enough to know which information. We can go through many sites and see, right? Like one site can provide wrong information, but all sites won't provide wrong information.
Okay, we'll be moving on to the next question.
So you had mentioned something about it being a fundamental right, and we can say our opinions on social media, but at what risk? So do you think somebody who will spread their opinions, maybe I'm just saying, for example, a racist person will spread their opinions on a certain race or or on a caste issue. Do you really think that will work towards the trust that social media wants to build with their users?
See, that's what I spoke about. It's general point of view and personal point of view. We cannot stop people from expressing their viewpoints, right? It may be wrong, but then it curtails the freedom of speech and it violates the human rights.
Okay, so we'll be moving on to the next speaker, Adhiraj Ghosh Dasadar, who will be speaking for the motion. So you have the floor for the next 3 minutes.
Words said could be forgotten, words written could be preserved. A very good afternoon to one and all present here and all my distinguished members of the audience and my respected judges. Today, I, Adhiraj Ghosh Dasidar, am going to speak on the topic, social media censorship is necessary for its long-term survival, and I am going for the motion. Censorship is an issue which frequently generates a great deal of heated debate, with supporters maintaining that it is vital in order to protect society, while its opponents claim that it is an unjustifiable restriction of public access to information. If this thing was just restricted to information, our world would be a better place. Meanwhile, firstly, all countries have secrets which must be safeguarded, for which reasons of national security. For instance, if an enemy country were to acquire such highly sensitive information, the effects could be catastrophic. Consequently, governments have to have the power to restrict access to information concerning areas such as the armed forces or the particular aspects of foreign policy. Secondly, it is often argued that censorship is necessary to prevent the broadcast and publication of some material which is considered offensive or harmful to public morals. Many people feel that without censorship, the public would be constantly subjected to material that the majority would find offensive. For this reason, the government has a duty to impose certain restriction on the mass media by censoring films and texts which contain explicit scenes, controversial statements for masses, violence, or foul languages. In an age where more and more people are using social media for both personal and professional reasons, there is an increasing amount of government censorship as well as self-censorship evident on widely used social media platforms. After conducting research on this topic, I have discovered the very fine line between using social media networking sites for personal uses versus professional uses. According to scholars, while only 47% non-academic users uses social media for professional purposes, about 91% of the school-going students use social media for varied reasons. Some of them are dealing drugs and also viewing some explicit content over internet. Yeah. still strange, but yeah, they all are teenagers and should have a certain limit line. Censorship can reduce the impact of hate speech in society, also can protect children from
Wrap up,
unhealthy,
please.
can reduce the amount of conflict that is in society, and also can provide another level of security to a country's profile.
Thank you, sir. So, impactful speech. Are there any questions on that? So, two questions. Anyone except Prakhar? Okay, audience, would you like to ask any questions? Okay, so Prakhar Trolia, you have the floor.
Right, thank you. So, overlooking the other aspects of your speech, just one simple question. The speaker talked about sensitive information and secrets. So, the only question I had is that does the speaker think that the way other organizations or countries would be firstly getting secrets for other countries would be through social media platforms, or secondly that social media platforms are the only way that these secrets can be spread in that they can be spread around the world and shared, and there are no other ways?
Okay, can I speak? Yeah,
Sure.
actually, if you go through the newses which are just in current debates, you can certainly see that some of the terrorism groups are also connected with WhatsApp, because it is said that it is end-to-end encrypted, and they use WhatsApp as a medium to just transfer information and special dates to have their operation done. In short, excess of anything is bad. Might it be freedom which could cause violence among you, me, and everyone? So yeah, excess of anything is bad. So we should have a regular check on everything.
Okay, so any other questions? I don't want to grant a follow-up, but there are no other questions apart from one for audience. Guys, participants, any other questions? Okay, so would you like a follow-up?
Sure.
No?
I think there's one hand raised.
Yeah. That's from the audience. So, Adrisha Sen, you have the floor.
Right. So, in your response to the previous question, you said excessive anything is not good. Therefore, by your definition, excessive censorship by the government should also be considered bad. And how would you respond to that?
We are not going excess of censorship, because in censorship board we can only censor some of the contents which are explicit and should not be viewed by the mass audience. So we cannot certainly say that we are censoring some of the contents in a mass amount. We are just trying to remove all the things which are useless and not verified by the government. You can say that we are showing you the thing I need you to see, but it's certainly not the fact. It's just about verification and just surpassing the correct news to all, and that's it.
Okay, so
Dangerous.
so seeing no other questions, we'll be moving on to the next speaker, who's Mobini Maiti, speaking against the motion. You have the floor for the next 3 minutes.
Okay, so what is censorship? Censorship is a limitation or an obstruction of one's basic freedom of speech, which is one's fundamental right. Very good afternoon to everyone present over here. Myself, Mohuni Maiti, would like to speak against the motion social media censorship is necessary for its long-term survival. Now, when we talk about censorship, we are actually talking about infringement of a basic fundamental right, which is the freedom of speech. Imagine one speaking on the road or a public forum, and we are actually censoring his opinions. Do you think it is justified? No, it's not. So the question of censorship does not even arise in the novel. novel by George Orwell, which is known as the novel 1942, there is his recurring line, "Big Brother is watching you." So imagine when every single social media site is being monitored by the government or the censor board. Do you think it is possible for us to write our heart out? No, it's not. It feels like we are doing a crime every moment, and it's a very psychological fact. Well, a very recent incident in Uttar Pradesh, it was not allowed to seek help from the social media about the beds or the oxygen cylinders during the second wave of the COVID-19 pandemic. But in West Bengal, there was no such restrictions, and which resulted in West Bengal, people got help from the social media. People got beds, they received the oxygen cylinders, but many people from Uttar Pradesh actually died because of no treatment. Government can use censorship in a different way. Anybody speaking against a government can be banned or censored. Remember about the JNU students who were protesting for the hostel fee, which was on high. Now, Twitter played a very important role there. Now, if social media restrains us from our freedom of speech, do you think it will last long? No, it won't, because social media today is a very prominent platform where we can voice our opinions. I believe social media is a place where we speak our hearts out, and it is completely against the fact that social media censorship is necessary for its long-term survival. Thank you.
Okay, with that Orwellian speech, we'll be looking forward to 2 questions. Okay, Sia Agarwal, any other questions? Followed by Riva Agarwal. So you have the floor.
All right. So my question to you was that you spoke about how people took help from the internet, from social media during the pandemic in order to create a provision for oxygen cylinders. But do you also remember that this had resulted in a lot of fraudsters and fake oxygen cylinders and fake supplies being distributed, and a lot of people were exploited as a result of this? So what do you have to say for that?
Well, I completely agree that there are at times misuse, or everything has its own advantage and disadvantage. But for a greater good, we sometimes have to have a lesser evil. Just because some people are misusing it, we can't restrict everybody. Now today, many people are misusing painkillers. But now, do you think we should ban painkillers today? Should we ban the OTT platform, Netflix, Amazon? There are so high contents there today. People are not viewing the normal films because of the OTT Amazon, and there in OTT and Amazon Netflix platforms also there are films which should be censored. So I feel that people are misusing it, but for some people we should not force every people to stop using social media.
Okay, so the next question will be by Riva Agarwal. The others are raising their hands. I'm sorry, I can't grant a follow-up or another question. So we'll just be moving on with the regular order.
So you said that people should be allowed to say anything for the freedom of speech, but say take for example when Donald Trump called the COVID-19 a hoax, so him being a president, he influenced millions of minds to think that it was something not to be taken heed of, right? So don't you think that if this one statement wasn't made, uncountable number of people could have been saved from COVID-19, like uncountable people could have actually taken precautions if they hadn't listened to him?
As I said before, every media has its own advantages and disadvantages, but in social media helps us in so many things. Just for one disadvantage or for one dispute, we cannot ban or censor it. And if we start doing so, we are actually harming people from voicing their opinion against a particular fact.
Okay, so I hope that answered your question. We'll be moving on to the next speaker, Sia Agarwal, who will be speaking for the motion.
Thank you for the floor. So Abraham Lincoln once said, "Don't believe everything you see on the internet just because there's a picture with a quote next to it." 54% of Americans get their news from social media, and 80% of these total consumers in the US reported having seen fake news on the coronavirus outbreak. Social media is a breeding ground for violent and pornographic material, Anything that incites hate of various groups or causes polarization, and confidential or classified documents that can affect the security of the state or social conditions of the people. Children and teenagers using social media are exposed to a variety of information not suitable for their ages. And a lot of content slips through sites controlling family friendly and blacklisting, which also comes under self censorship. In an already polarized world, social media can easily be misused to crush the age old mantra of unity and diversity. In 2012, Assamese migrants were brutally attacked by Muslim groups during a peaceful protest at Azad Maidan in Mumbai against the then going Assam riots. This was followed by rumors that the entire Muslim population of the country was turning against the Assamese migrants and that Muslims in Assam will be evicted out of the state. At that time, social media was vital in acting as a vehicle for instantly disseminating these inflammatory messages. What followed were Assamese migrants fleeing to their homeland and a lot of brutal attacks on Muslims in Assam. The more people read such rumors, the more they start believing in them to be true. The absence of self-verification of facts before posting content is a major reason for this. The situation did not take too long to spiral out of control, as was obvious from all of the widespread riots that followed. This incident is just one example of why censorship sometimes becomes crucial and almost mandatory. Rumors and hate speech are merely some instances of content that could disrupt the harmony and unity in any country. Hence, many nations have put constraints on free expression, including libel, slander, perjury, obscenity, sedition, incitement, disclosure of classified information, unauthorized use of copyrighted information, trade secrets, etc. In 1948, the UN adopted the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which does include the right to freedom of expression, but it also sets boundaries against speech that damage the right and reputation of others. Hence, like every family has rules and values to maintain order, censorship on social media is needed for it to survive. For without this, the world would be thrown into anarchical chaos without any boundaries to maintain. This would lead to concerned citizens opting to stay away from the world of fake news and crime, as well as setting stricter rules on their children. Taking all of this into account, it is difficult for any government to completely avoid censoring any content online. After all, they are the public bodies responsible for the law and order of their countries, and without censoring harmful content, the only option left would be preventing the use of global media. Thank you.
Okay, so are there any questions on that entertaining speech? Guys, other participants, we can't just have the same hands raised. Okay, Abranil Chaudhary, followed by Prakhar Rolia.
Right, so you did say that some 80% of the population reported fake news spread, right? So could you elaborate on that? What is your proof to elaborate on that issue? Like 80% fake and 20% have like believe that.
That is a statistical data taken from.
Yes, could you give an example?
Okay, no crosstalk, please.
What kind of example are you talking about? What I said was that 80% of total social media consumers in the USA reported having seen fake news on the COVID outbreak. So this is an example of statistical data taken from the internet.
All right, ma'am, if you want to provide a source, you can do that, but we'll be moving on to the next speaker, who's, next question by Prakhar Rolia.
Great, thank you. So in this speech, you talked about several things, but if we look at the motion, it talks about the long-term survival of it, which is the social media as well. So do you think if censorship is not present, and as per you, then the spread of fake news will affect the survival of a platform, of social media platforms, will affect the survival of social media platforms if we do not censor fake news, which as per you will create chaos? Hasn't been proved in any research, although.
To answer your question, I did not explicitly state that censorship of that not censoring only fake news will throw us into chaos, but rather any kind of information on the internet, because and like I've already said,
that without governments or without people controlling what they read or what they see on the internet will create a lot of misinformation. And this would affect the survival of social media platforms that will lose out on users who want to stay away from these kind of things. And as it is, we can see dwindling user percentage on certain sites.
Okay, I hope that answers your question. The next speaker is Prakhar Tulay himself, speaking against the motion. So Prakhar, you have the floor for the next few minutes.
Oh, yeah. Can I just get Can I just get 2 seconds? I just said the time.
Sure.
Oh, I can start.
Yeah, you have the floor.
Right. Thank you. So I, Prakhar Jolia, totally oppose this motion, and there are several reasons why I should oppose this motion and why everyone present over here should oppose this motion. And I'm going to present the reasons in front of everyone. Also to the agenda and presents arguments that are not baseless, which I'll elaborate on further. So firstly, social media is all about freedom of speech. It is what their founders have touted them to be as. Freedom of speech for the free party is what some people call social media platforms like Twitter. You cannot just stop people from expressing their opinion. It affects debate like the one we are having over here. And when we talk about freedom of speech, the constitution of almost no country or neither do international agreements. Most international agreements governing social media usage talk about that there is nothing such as absolute freedom of speech. There is no such mention in most such documents, and hence freedom of speech is nothing if it is selective and not absolute. Also, when we move forward, it should also be understood that when we talk about censorship is basically removing some views that have been presented on these platforms. And when you remove these views, how do you remove them? You remove selective views that you think should be censored. What about the propaganda present over here? There has been several research done into this, which suggests that, for example, if you take private companies censoring, they have their own agenda in their mind. They are funded by some organization, some political party, and at times it has been seen that what they censor is done incorrectly. Also, if a government does it, that is completely authoritarian. Moving forward, when we talk about what proposition speakers have presented, which are completely baseless as well and based on an idealistic world, rather, if we do not do censorship, it has been seen that when censorship is performed, it negatively affects the opinions of people whose views get censored, and they become more extremist rather than becoming more concerning and understanding. And continuing on the point of incorrect censorship, as per research published by the NCBI and the PCM as well, social media censorship of views and information on the pandemic, which the proposition suggests helped, actually did not help. Rather, it created more problems, as often the wrong views were censored. It affected clarity of an issue. Also, considering how it was a developing situation and social media platforms did not censor the right views, and led to even bigger problems for researchers as well. The same report also finds that censorship is not a solution to any misinformation either. Rather, education and countering false and allegedly false claims helps more when people engage on debate in social media platforms. Finally, when we talk about survival of social media, rather censorship is what does not guarantee the survival of social media. I've seen in several cases. For example, currently in Nigeria, the social media platform Twitter censored the views of the government, of the president over there, and Twitter was banned in Nigeria. Twitter was literally banned in Nigeria and hasn't been able to resume its services. Hence, to conclude, it is better that censorship does not take place, which will guarantee social media survival as well, as people are allowed to present their views, and that is what people as well as governments want.
Okay, thank you, Prakhar. We'll be looking forward to 2 questions in that speech, preferably from participants. Okay, so Adhiraj Ghosh Dastidar, followed by Reeba Agarwal.
Yes, so as my one of the fellow speakers said that social media is important for just coming throughout from some of the important news what the audience wants to say. I just want to question him one thing, that is it always necessary that everyone in this social life will be associated with the correct news and associated with the news we need to know? Like one of the fellow people might be associated with some of the other groups which might create a violence in the country and within the socialism and all the caste system of the country and among the people. Like it might divide us. What he would say on it.
Oh, right. So to answer that, as I have said in my speech, there's firstly several folds to this. Firstly, censorship also cannot guarantee that it will be peaceful, as censorship has been seen to always promote one propaganda. Secondly, when we talk about people spreading hate or people spreading news that is false, it has been found by researchers that it is a more efficient and a better method to counter them through debate and by calling those claims out and fact checking them and verifying them on social media platforms themselves, rather than censoring those views, as that firstly leads to issues in several different manners on several different levels of government and other areas, and secondly also makes them more extremist. And just like you said, for example, WhatsApp is end-to-end encrypted. If someone has to spread hate, they have several channels to spread hate.
Prakhar, we can't hear you.
He might be having some network issues.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, can you
Yeah,
hear me
would you
now?
like to repeat like the last part of your last 3 sentences or so?
Right. Yeah. Sorry for the inconvenience. What I was saying was that, as I said in my speech, and as you also said previously in your speech or in answers, see, there are several places where false news can be spread. False news can be spread through verified news channels as well, if you say so. They have been caught spreading fake news as well, and that is why it is. Researchers have also found it is important to educate people and counter these false claims rather than censor them and create a bigger problem in the world.
Okay, thank you. Reba Agrawal, you have the floor.
So when you're talking about freedom of speech, like recently Rahul Gandhi exposed the identity of the parents of the 9-year-old that was raped, and he violated multiple laws while doing so. So if that tweet wasn't deleted or censored as such, how do you think that the results would have been better off?
Right. So what he did was wrong. But when you talk about censorship, let's go on to what happened after his tweet was deleted by Twitter itself. The Congress party came out accusing Twitter, came out accusing the government, and came out defending its leader Rahul Gandhi. That is why censorship does not solve the problem. Rather, it increases the problem. It brought more people's attention to that. More people were able to see that. More people were able to see what happened. Rather, what should be done is such leaders should be educated. Do not elect such leaders. Do not give them prominence if these leaders do not know how to act in the real world, how to act in society. That is why, again, education is important. Censorship, like it happened in this case, the Congress party came out defending its leader, defending its beloved leader Rahul Gandhi, and nothing happened. There were news channels defending Rahul Gandhi at times. Well, you can't do anything, right? Rather, if you educate them, such problems will never arise.
Okay, with that, we'll be moving on to the next speaker. Ritika Dev will be speaking for the motion. So, Ritika, you have the floor.
Can I start?
You have the floor.
Messaging apps have overtaken social media platforms in the number of active monthly users by 20% in 2020. As you can see, social media is already losing its ground. Good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, and chair. I'm Ritika Dev of Class 9F, and I'll be speaking for the motion. Social media censorship is necessary for its long-term survival. Hate speeches, fake news, public humiliation, and obscene content are on the rise. Do you really believe that people will continue using social media if these are not curbed? While there have been quite a few recent examples in the right direction, such as Trump being blocked by Twitter or Amazon pulling down its hosting services to Parler, such instances are far and wide. The menace is amplified by fake news. Due to lack of education and awareness, receivers believe anything sent to them over social media, which is rarely validated. Social media has a huge power, and that is of influence. Thus, a certain amount of censorship is needed in this virtual world. A fellow speaker had mentioned that posting on controversial and sensitive topics are within our fundamental rights. But at what risk? Humiliating other people and talking badly about various groups just creates two opposing parties in this world. As per where social media is concerned, do you think the users that are targeted will continue using the platform? Trust is lost in this case between the user and social media, and without this trust, social media cannot function. In short, censorship is needed. Even big companies such as Facebook has recognized this as it changed its mission statement in 2017 from making the world more open and connected to one that actively prioritized groups so user could build community and bring the world closer together. Even parents have plenty of work to do in today's society to protect their children from unhealthy influences such as illegal content and drug usage, etc. There is content everywhere on these issues, including items that slip through parental filters and kid-friendly apps that could lead to harmful encounters in the future. A high level of security is thus needed and lines need to be drawn to it. And thus, censorship has to be there. Social media faces serious threats on both public backlash as well as government bans due to lack of meaningful censorship. Social media apps could be criminally liable for any content deemed illegal on their platform. While those in power may use this as a vehicle to stiffen public opinion on social media, it also shows the importance, the sheer importance of censorship of censorship on the long-term survival of social media. In conclusion, I believe a line needs
already past time. Okay, so we'll be recognizing two questions on that. Okay, Mopini Maiti, followed by Purbi.
Okay, so my question says that you mentioned that there are people who are not educated, who are not knowledgeable enough, and they spread the fake rumors, they troll people. But I would like to ask you, will censorship help in making those people educated, and will the mindset of the people change if only with the help of censorship?
Well, the mindset of the people, it might change for censorship because the fake news instead that is being received by the people, that is changing the influence. Because social media, it has a huge power of influence on the people, and people believe whatever news, like as you said, education is needed. But in the long term, like whatever is being sent to them, people will believe it. And that's why censorship is needed to stop from those fake news to go to the people so that they don't get influenced from them.
Okay, we'll be moving on to the next question by Purbi.
I wanted to ask, you mentioned that there are kid-friendly apps and which curtail drug usage and everything. But if there are kid-friendly apps, why is censorship needed? Like, if there are kid-friendly apps, the parents can just tell the kids to use that apps. Why is censorship needed to do so?
Because sometimes ads and all, they do come. So due to some reason, they do come in those apps. And once the kid does see it, if they do see it, then it will cause problems because at such a young age, they shouldn't be exposed to such content. So censorship is really needed to back that up. Because if by any chance, if it does happen, then there is nothing that we can do. The kid is already exposed to all these content, and it acts as a bad influence to them. That's why censorship will be needed.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. We'll be moving on to the next speaker, speaking against the motion, Abranil Chaudhary.
Right. Joseph Brodsky, an Russian poet, once said that there are worse crimes than burning books. One of them is not reading them. Good afternoon, students and my fellow friends here. I am Abranil Chaudhary, who is defending against the motion that censorship in social media is required. for long term long term. So firstly, I'll start by using some points which states that censorship always takes away the significant level of freedom from the people. This is one of the main common points. I'll give an example. A Muslim director once was arrested because of sexually explicit photographs from Robert Malthus were included in an art exhibit. Although the artist's work displays images, often black and white, that features nudity and a certain amount of suggestiveness, it was far from violent or suggestive content that would encourage lawlessness. Next, religion is often misused to promote censorship. Now, we've seen in some cases that some religious activities, like most of them, are censored, not knowing what they actually are. Because some people who are censoring it, they may not know what is it for, or what is it about. So it may be something really good about some festival, or maybe something really harassing happening. So that is one point. Also, the people who are setting the rules for censorships, they are basically the ones who are running the whole thing, right? So if they turn out to be corrupt, then the whole system goes wrong. Suppose during election campaigns, the person who censors is suppose a specific party, so he will not censor the messages regarding to that party, but he will do for the opposition. That is one of the points, and it also it also like sets apart where like it like it restricts information, like it most restricts most of information accesses. It's entirely possible that the information is blocked with like fake information, which is blocked. Like it slows down the process of sharing information. Like, yeah, that's that. And it is actually the cost for censoring is actually a lot. I believe this cost can be used significantly in other areas. Like in China, over $2 million were used in 2015 for censoring certain stuff. I believe that as what Adhiraj, no, Prakhakar once said, like he said, right, education is must, and I don't believe that censorship works. So that's that. Educating people should be the necessity, not censoring the people should be a necessity, because if people understand, they will not post such things, and
Cover, please.
then we won't have a requirement. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir. We'll be recognizing two questions, so please come forward. Any other volunteers? Reba Agrawal, followed by Adhiraj Ghosh Tassidar.
So private companies like Instagram take a stand against bullying and inappropriate comments, etc. So does this feature in itself not prove your whole speech wrong? That one of the biggest social media platform itself believes that something need to be censored because there has to be a line drawn somewhere.
Right, so they do censor stuff, but most of them, I believe, they are not censored materials because, see, I understand that some Instagram posts include like graphic content which need to be censored, but some of them do not, right? Most of them do not. Like they support, like they look forward to bullying, anti-bullying, right? So some of them like maybe misinterpreted and then that also leads to like stop of spreading of information.
Okay, so next question, please.
Yeah, my fellow speaker just said that the person elected for the censorship group of government will always support the motives and always support the perspective of the government. I just want to question him just one simple thing, that we all have watched Indian world cricket or like football world cricket, and you will certainly see that the umpire is not biased. The umpire might be of any country and he mentally can support anyone, but he have to give an opinion based on what he sees.
Right.
So you are
right.
just to support your answer, what you are going to say.
Right. So you believe that the umpire is not biased, right? So there are football, like you give the example of Indian cricket. So I'll give you example of football matches where the referees have been racist, suppose for a team member without any reason, they've just thrown them off. So there are bias in every platform. Suppose even in the Indian voting system, in the voting polls, the old aged people are being guided by the representatives to to vote a particular party. So everything is rigged. It is not straightforward. So if you give me an example that it is like completely 100% efficient, you are wrong.
Like we all are binded with
So
trust.
no
So
crosstalk, please. No crosstalk. No
okay,
crosstalk.
I'm
Stay
sorry.
inside. We'll be moving on to the last speaker of today's or the morning session, Titash Majumdar speaking against the motion. So Titash, you have. Oh, sorry. Yeah, speaking for the motion. Yeah, my bad. Titash, you have the floor for the next 3 minutes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Tatash Majumdar, and I'm arguing for the motion that social media censorship is necessary for its long-term survival, but only when done in a limited manner and by the people, not by governments. So when I say censorship, I don't mean censoring any and everything that could offend people, because then barely anyone would be able to talk on social media at all. Now, in my argument, censorship is the regulation of speech that is violent or encourages violence against groups of people or individuals, or content that is inappropriate for certain ages to view. Censorship, when utilized in a limited manner, even helps people say what they wish to say safely. The opposition constantly keeps bringing up free speech, but free speech is only free as long as it does not seek to harm another person or a group of people. The most obvious benefit of social media censorship is obviously the protection of children and minors. Even having minimum age requirements, which all social media platforms have, to like age requirements to be able to use a platform or view content is a form of censorship. Having absolutely none of that would expose children to content that they're not ready for. It's absolutely necessary to protect children from pornographic, violent, or explicit content. Yes, I agree that it's good to be exposed to the world and all of its dangers from an early age, but there has to be a limit to that. Another example of this is US ex-President Donald Trump was recently banned from all major social media networks, which is a form of censorship. And I challenge anyone out here, I openly challenge you to argue that this censorship was not for the better, that removing a man who repeatedly encouraged violence against so many minority groups of the world was not necessary. Under his legislation, hate groups and violence increased an alarming amount. His unfiltered use of social media to spread hate speech and to just openly berate people was a large part of why that happened. And if he had been censored just even a few months before that, then maybe all of the violence that occurred would not have happened. Censorship of hate speech allows for less people to be swayed by such violent and hateful ideas as well. Science has shown that the media we're exposed to influences our thoughts and beliefs greatly. If people play more violent video games, watch more violent media, then they are more influenced by that violence and will be more likely to commit violent acts. Consider the case of Ted Bundy, the famous serial killer. The reason he turned into such a monster was because of unfiltered use of just social media for bad things. If people are less exposed to speech and content that encourages violence, they will be less likely to be influenced towards those things as well. So I've spoken a bit about why we need censorship, but I've mentioned that the government should not be the one that just does censorship. So let's talk about how we should implement it. Censorship by the government has always turned out badly for everyone involved. So that's why I argue that it should be done by the people themselves. Social media platforms already do this, where users can report harmful speech themselves, and when enough users do it, it's removed already. So this way, censorship could be implemented without invoking authority figures, and we would all be kept safe. So thank you, and that concludes my speech.
Okay, so thank you for that speech. That closes the debate, but before that, we'll have 2 questions. So any other volunteers? Anyone else? Audience? If not, Mobini Maiti followed by Prakrit Rolia for the last 2 questions.
My learned friend mentioned in her speech that if someone's opinion is hurting the other, that should be censored. So there are uncountable people using social media today. Everyone belongs from various cultures, various backgrounds. So just because if one's opinion is hurting the other, do you think it should be banned or censored?
Absolutely, I 100% do. It's harming people and it's causing so much psychological damage. And if it does hurt someone else, then yes, it should be removed. I don't really see what was the point of that question, to be honest.
Hope that answers your question. Next question is by Prakhar.
Thank you. So my question is related to the method at the end suggested to implement censorship. Now, when we talk about the method that was suggested, firstly, what is the use of censorship if people have to report it, meaning that it's already spread enough that people know about it and are reporting it because a significant amount is required? And if people are reporting it, can't people from, let's say, one wing, let's say it's a right wing who's presenting his or her views, and the left wingers just come in and report that as much as possible, and then that would get censored? So what is the use of such a method when this can promote, then this is almost the same thing as a government or one organization censoring a tweet?
I don't believe that it's the same thing, because then it depends on the majority of the people, what they believe, instead of what the government wants us to believe, okay? So like a large number of people report something. And like you said, yes, of course, there's the risk of like a large number of people from a specific political affiliation doing it. But the thing is, who ultimately has the control of it? The social media, the people in charge of censoring themselves. So like the people would report it, and then if, I mean, I don't know if you've noticed, but you can report comments on Instagram, and then if they find that it doesn't go against their community guidelines, then they just remove that. So yeah.
Okay, so a follow-up will not be granted on that question. With that, we come to the end of the debate, but we'll have a poll, and it's open to the audience, it's open to everyone in the meeting, regarding which side was the winner of the morning session. So you'll see a poll on your screen. Please start voting, and we'll end it in half a minute or so. Everyone can vote, by the way, participants, audience. So feel free, please.
Excuse me, I had a question actually.
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to know, when are we going to get the results and how many people will qualify to the next round?
So I believe 12 people will qualify, but it obviously depends on everyone's performance. It'll likely be 12 people that qualify or in total, including the evening session. So you'll be told after that, not like right now. So I'll end the poll because it was dead even for a while, but as you can see, the for side won by just one vote. So congratulations to everyone on the for side of the debate. So obviously we can't really release the results or anything like that, but I do have a lot of feedback. Before that, I'll ask Rithi to give some feedback to you guys, like our wonderful judge. So Rithi, please go ahead.
Hey Ayush, hey everyone. Thanks for having me. This was wonderful to judge. I think everyone gave their best shot, and regardless of whether you won the House vote or not, I'm glad everyone put in the time and effort to prepare for this. I think a general rule of thumb with regards to debating would be to analyze your argumentation, which is to say that don't make assertive claims, try to back up everything you're saying with analysis. I think that was beautiful reference to like certain pieces of research that I really enjoyed. And I think in general, the quality of debate was good. No more feedback from me. Good luck for future rounds, guys. Over to you, Ayush.
Okay, thank you so much, Rithi, and thank you for being here for everyone and stuff. So I have a bunch of feedback for you guys, and obviously it's not all positive, not all negative. straight up, it was a very good debate. There was a lot of competition, which I'm really proud of. Like some people genuinely really surprised me. But obviously, every debate has its negatives. And what I noticed was that okay, give me a second. Sorry. Yeah. Okay. So thank you, Riddhi. Um, yeah. So what I noticed was that it was a very government-centric discussion for the most part, which it doesn't really necessarily have to be that way. If you want to and if you want to talk about government, you can talk about like the draconian laws that have already been implemented in the like the last few years or even in history, etc. It's a slippery slope, like goes without saying. I'm surprised nobody used that word, and I'm also surprised nobody brought up um, the Arab Spring. Like that would have been a really good example to use here. And I really liked a few arguments actually. I obviously I can't explicitly state them, but it had to do with a cost benefit analysis of censorship and etc. And sometimes like in some speeches there was a severe lack of like cross examination. Like okay, so I'll just like bring up one point because I feel like it's necessary to bring up. Like someone brought up like fundamental rights, but rights also go hand in hand with duties, and nobody else brought that up, which is like you could have got free points if you did. And also on the topic of this being a very government-centric discussion, the government isn't the only agent that censors social media, right? Like there are several private platforms as well, like Twitter, Facebook, etc., etc., etc. And there have also been a lot of platforms. I'm forgetting the name, but there were social media platforms. I think it was called Parley or something that was completely free to use, had no censorship whatsoever, and it was completely dominated by the right wing of Americans and like neo Nazis and Trump supporters and whatnot. Um,
It was under Amazon, and then Amazon had stopped being its hosting service. I actually mentioned it.
yeah. So thank you for that. Like, I completely forgot the name, but I think it was like Parley or something like that. So, like honestly, you guys could have brought that up, and also, there was like sometimes there was like a lack of examination. Okay, I'm giving a lot of like negative feedback. It's because I usually don't bring up like the positive aspects of people's speeches and stuff. Because if you did something well, then you know it, right? I don't have to like bring it out to you. So honestly, you guys did really well, and even in the score sheet, I can see that like it's like some of you gave like a stunning performance and stuff. So but sometimes there was like a lack of examination of how censorship is usually used. Like you could, it's like there was like reference of how governments bring it up, but not private platforms. Like not enough, in my opinion. Like, um, you know, one good example of that is how Facebook uses it to like suppress political ads, usually from the left wing or something. It turns into this like scenario where it's it's tilted towards one side, right? And censorship from like by these platforms is far from perfect. Like definitely, I remember if okay, so if it's like manually you're trying to like figure out which post to take down and which not to, it's like there's also a cost benefit analysis there. And if you want automation, there's also problems there, right? So you bring that up. Like Facebook a few years ago, for example, it took down pictures of onions under the pretext that it was like explicit and displayed nudity and stuff. And I remember I've done this like motion a few times before, and I always bring it up because it's such a funny example. Like but whatever. Then again, these another interesting point you could have brought up was that these like private platforms have certain terms and conditions, right? And you're obligated to do so, like use those or follow those terms and conditions when you sign up for them. And so you think about it, like what impact does this motion have on these regulations? And there've already been like certain impacts that this motion and like government laws, for example, have had on terms and regulations. I think of WhatsApp, Facebook, what's happening in India as well. Like, there was like a huge crisis of people wondering whether or not social media would be wiped off the face of all our phones and shit. So also for some of you, I think your understanding of the motion could have been a bit better. And in general, I think you could have focused more on the exact phrasing of the motion, how it matters, because everyone was talking about social media censorship, undoubtedly, right? But nobody talked about, or not nobody, but a lot of you didn't talk about how its long-term survival is jeopardized when social media censorship is in place, right? So that was something you could have brought up. But regardless, all of the constructive criticism, if you can call it constructive, out of the way, it was genuinely really, really amazing. There are a lot of like young people here, a lot of familiar faces for me as well, and like everyone did a really good job. It's fine if you believe that you didn't perform up to the mark, because it's been a really good debate. And this was a very basic motion, but you guys lived up to it. So I'm really happy. And congratulations to the four side for winning. But obviously, you know that it doesn't really matter. It was just one vote anyway. So with that, I'll stop recording because we've come to the end of our debate. Thank you so much for joining in. Results will be given to you soon. So you can leave if you want. Goodbye.